Today is April 8th, 2013, and today I'm going to talk to you about the Middle Ages. Some takeaways from this. Now, I'm not going to take and read through all these, but I will upload this PowerPoint so you can look at this. But these are some of the takeaways that we have for this unit. I will give a graphic or a unit organizer actually in class, so you can look at it. Actually, by now you should have that. People will talk about when did the Middle Ages begin and when did they end. People think that the Middle Ages did last about 900 years. Some people believe that it lasted till 1400 AD, which is today would be CE. Historians disagree on that. There's a lot of controversy about when it happened. Some people think it ended in 1492 when Christopher Columbus discovered America. But there's a lot of differentiation in, when did it start, when did it fall, things like that. Some people think that Alaric, when he sacked Rome, people think that the Middle Ages started then when he took over Romulus Augustulus. So, I just want to let you look at this, and this is a lot of debate. This is up for a lot of debate. But anyway, disclaimer, and I want to read this a lot. Some of the things that I teach is not necessarily what I believe, but I just want to let people know that when we discuss the corruption in the church, I'm not referring to the actual religion. I'm referring to the people that use the religion to gain favors monetarily or politically. These different opinions are important in shaping different ways that some worship today. Beginning in the Middle Ages, like I said, this is up for debate, but you had the decline of Rome, had the rise of Northern Europe, new forms of government, heavy Romanization. When we talk about Romanization, people wanted religion, language, laws, architecture, and the government to be as if it was Rome. Latin, the Middle Ages, you have medium, aevum, which means middle age, and that's where you get the word medieval that you see at the bottom of your screen there. The Dark Ages, like I said, it's different times when it started, but the reason why it was named the Dark Ages, scholars named this the Dark Ages when the forces of darkness, the barbarians, overwhelmed the forces of light, which is the Romans. And this is all a point of view. You don't know exactly, what the differences are as far as the viewpoints of the barbarians or the Romans. So depending on which side of the fence you're on, which one's the light and which one's the dark and which one's the villain. That's why it's called history. And at this time, we talk about a lot of different things that will burn. You had the libraries and things like that will burn, and that's what led to the loss of a lot of historical documents. And that's why that's why there's a lot of confusion during this time, because there are really no historical documents to talk about. Let me get that off. Now, the next we're going to talk about is you had warriors in the West. You have, if you look at the bottom here, you have the Celtics, you have the Gauls, you have the Britons and the Britons, you have the Germanic Goths, Franks, Vandals, Saxons. You had all those different people or tribes that inhabited North and Western Europe. And these tribes awfully fought for supremacy. This hodgepodge that you see here, all these are different tribes and where they kind of migrated from and to. And I will, like I said, you'll have a chance to look at this and make some sense out of it. Wanted to upload this to the school website and let you look at it at your earliest convenience. One, if you think about this, let me go back. One area is Constantinople, and that was part of the Byzantine Empire. Now, Constantinople, if you look here, is the former city of Byzantium. It became the new capital and control of the Roman Empire because of its location. Had a strategic location between the east and the west, so it was like all roads kind of went through Constantinople in order to make sure that it pretty much got its cut or its share of the wealth. Constantinople was this part. You had Asia Minor, places like that. All that you see in the darker yellow was all of the Byzantine Empire, and this was as of 814 CE. Expanded influence of the church. Now, at this point, Christianity is becoming a prominent religion in Western Europe. All right, the Christian church has become an important political, economic, and spiritual and cultural influence of Europe. The leading officials were the Pope and the Patriarch, and they had a banning on any religion that was not of the Christian faith. Okay, and in the 11th century, you had a split to the Eastern Orthodox and the Roman Catholic in Rome. And they had this idea, and this is where my disclaimer come in earlier. He said, "You scratch my back, I scratch yours." It was pretty much a way I could put it to where you could understand it. It's between the church and the kings. They both scratch each other's back and for favors and things like that, as far as the structure was involved in between the church and the state. Especially in the Middle Ages, a lot of the historical documents and things were kept by monks. And monks were people who gave up worldly possessions to devote themselves to religious life. And they read and they wrote, and that's where education was pretty much stored at this point in history. You had Justinian the Great, and you also had a guy named Constantine the Great. These two individuals, they pretty much ran the Byzantine Empire. Or Constantinople. They pretty much kept it afloat and also fought for Christianity and tried to suppress all paganism or anything that was not of the Christian faith. And this was a picture of the Byzantine Empire. I'll let you look at that later on. There's the Carolingians. And the Carolingians, pretty much this guy that you see here to the right. This guy's name was Charlemagne or Charles the Great. See at the bottom, number one, let me give you some facts on Charles the Great. He lived from 742 to 814 CE, which is Common Era, and he was known as the King of the Franks. His father, and I know a lot of students laugh at his name, his father was Pepin the Short. Pepin the Short owned all of the Frankish Empire that you see here, and then divided into thirds. He owned most of it, and he had a son named Carloman and then a son named Charlemagne. And Pepin the Short died, and since Charlemagne was the oldest, he got his dad's in part of the empire, and Carloman had unfortunately passed away and inherited the whole empire itself. Now, a couple other different points. Charlemagne was 6'4". He was from the Germanic peoples in the north, actually the northeast of Europe, and he pretty much emphasized on the religious faith, Christianity. He also wanted a revitalization, or he wanted a rebirth of knowledge. So he was kind of like the lighthouse in the darkness, if you want to call him that, and he tried to restore the university ideology and things like that. So, but when he died, it was kind of like the light died with him. And this was his empire that you see here. Then you had the Holy Roman Empire, and I told you about Charlemagne. And we're going to go through, now you set up a feudal system. And feudalism we'll talk about in class, but I'll show you something on it here in a second. But it was the slaves and the serfs made up a lot of it. It was slaves made up of the conquered people, and some were treated harshly, some were treated fairly. And like I said, I'll upload this at a later date. And they had the birth of the modern languages, like the Anglo-Saxon language, which turned into Old English, and you had Old German and Old Norse language, and Spanish and Italian. This, and I'll let you read this, but what you see to the right, that is feudalism, and that's the feudal system, basically. And over here are key terms, and this is also on your wiki page. We will be defining those as a class. You had a lot of wars and conflicts. Magna Carta, the Crusades, and Norman conquest will be some of the ones that we'll be talking about especially. and we'll talk about why they started and how they pretty much ended. Then you had new ideas of thinkers, and these are some of the, what you want to call the ideas that were started, and also some accomplishments as well. Then you had the Black Death. The Black Deaths pretty much took out a third of the population, killed estimated 34 million people. And this pandemic struck at this point in history. That was the bell, so everybody's coming back. You had the bubonic plague, which we'll talk about. And also, these are some pictures here that you see. And you got some ideas of inventions and key figures, and we'll discuss those at a later date. So I'm going to go ahead and get off of here. And I hope you enjoyed this very brief. And like I said, I will upload this PowerPoint when I get a chance to, hopefully today, which is the 8th of April, 2013. If you have any questions, you can always hit me on Edmodo and ask me questions there. Or if you get a chance to write them down, we talk about it in class. But I will upload this PowerPoint so you can see it at a later date. Thank you very much.